Roland High School IB's Summer Podcast number 6, The Greenhouse Effect. This podcast is intended to supplement SOCO's pages 438 to 440. Be sure to read them. The greenhouse effect. How does a gardener's greenhouse work? Let's suppose that you'd like to grow some tropical plants and the climate in your location won't support them. You might choose to grow those plants inside a greenhouse because it provides a warmer environment, simulating the tropical environment that the plants like. So how does this work? Well, the sunlight from the sun is mostly in the visible portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. Sunlight, visible light, passes through glass. So some of the sunlight gets reflected back from the glass surfaces of the greenhouse, but most of it gets through the glass. This way, energy is entering the greenhouse in the form of visible light. When the sunlight strikes the interior surfaces of the greenhouse, it warms them. The interior surfaces of the greenhouse radiate energy, as all warm bodies do. Do you remember the Stefan-Boltzmann law? But using the temperature of the interior surfaces of the greenhouse in Wien's law, remember, Wien's law is lambda max is equal to 2.9 times 10 to the negative third divided by the temperature. In other words, the temperature of a surface determines the wavelength that's going to be emitted. By calculating that, we can see that the warm surfaces inside the greenhouse are going to radiate infrared wavelengths. So visible light comes in through the glass, hits the surfaces heat up, those warm surfaces radiate infrared wavelengths. Unlike visible light, which passes through the glass easily, infrared wavelengths are absorbed by the glass. This warms the glass, which in turn re-radiates, again, in infrared spectrum, and some of the radiation goes back into the greenhouse, which makes your tropical plants happy. Okay, here's a short version of the story. The short version is visible light passes through the glass in the greenhouse, but infrared does not. A greenhouse lets visible light in, but it doesn't let the infrared back out. This is why it gets so hot in a parked car and in a greenhouse. The greenhouse effect. So how does a greenhouse effect for planets work? Well, a bit like a greenhouse. When visible light from the sun reaches the Earth's atmosphere, about 30% of it is reflected back into space. The 70% that makes it through the atmosphere warms the surface of the Earth and the atmosphere. The surface of the Earth radiates the energy back, as all warm bodies do. Remember the Stefan-Boltzmann law? By using the Earth's average temperature of 288 kelvins and Wien's law, lambda max equals 2.9 times 10 to the negative third divided by 288 kelvins, we can see that the energy radiated by the warm surface of the Earth is in the infrared range of wavelengths. Unlike visible light, which passes easily through the atmosphere, infrared radiation is strongly absorbed by various gases in the atmosphere. These are called greenhouse gases. The primary greenhouse gases are water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. When these gases absorb the infrared radiation, they are warmed, and in turn, they re-radiate infrared in all directions. Some of this infrared returns to the Earth and is essentially trapped. So here's the short version of the greenhouse effect. Visible light from the sun passes through the atmosphere and it reaches the ground, warming it. The warm ground radiates infrared energy, and the infrared energy that is being radiated by the ground cannot pass through the atmosphere, and therefore the Earth gets warmer. So, is the greenhouse effect good or bad? Since most of what you've heard and read about the greenhouse effect is negative, it's easy to get the impression that the greenhouse effect is a bad thing. This isn't strictly true, since without the greenhouse effect, the average temperature on Earth would be about 32 kelvins, that's about 58 degrees Fahrenheit, colder. Without the greenhouse effect, it's highly likely that humans would not exist. So, when we talk with concern about the greenhouse effect, we really mean the enhanced greenhouse effect, which refers to the additional warming by increased quantities of greenhouse gases that are put in the atmosphere by human activities. Study figure 2.6 on page 439 until you're sure you understand it. That's it for the podcast. If you've listened to this podcast, send me an email to let me know, and you'll receive your first participation point of the new school year. This offer expires on August 1st.